Record, dance. Welcome to another episode of Living Luna, where we keep it real and silly all the time.
All the time.
Except for when we get really, really serious. That's the real and not silly. That's the real and serious. So we keep it real, we keep it serious, and we keep it silly, somehow all at the same time. So welcome. We are going to be joined today by a fabulous guest, Bridget Aileen Sicsko, who I hope I just said her last name right. I'm going to have her repronounce that when she gets on here. But she is an incredible entrepreneur who is the founder of Exalted Publishing House and co-founder of her brainchild Visibility on Purpose. And she just brings this passion and energy to all she does. She's a natural number 3, if you're following along with that game. And she has helped people find their spiritual backbone in their business and become incredible transformational leaders in their own ways. So we can't wait to have a conversation with her. So, welcome, Bridget!
Hi, this is so fun.
We're so glad that you agreed to be on Living Luna, and we just are going to jump right in. I have an immediate question for you because I've been witnessing the unfolding of your journey on socials lately, and it sounds like you are in the midst of like a really big rebirth moment, maybe? Tell us about that.
Oh, I would say that is exactly what's happening, and this is a fun time to talk about it. And through that journey, there's been many, many ups and downs, and I like to be really transparent of it all. So a little bit of the story on that is I've been running a publishing company for the last 2+ years, and it's been beautiful. Had the opportunity to help a lot of people, and it was really fun. I got to do what I love, which is asking questions and getting to the story and having people share it. So business-wise, it was going great. And at the end of last year, I started to feel extremely burnt out. I started to feel extremely anxious. I was waking up in the middle of the night with heart palpitations, and I'm like, this is a no. As someone who knows what their body feels like when it's in the yummy state, there's a disconnect here. So I did a lot of perspective and introspection and reflection. And I asked myself, do I like the idea of being a publisher more than actually being a publisher? So that started my death phase, and I'll pause there.
Deep resonance with this, because that's exactly what happened with my therapy career over the last 6 months too. So there's definitely something in the air right now for big rebirth energy.
Yeah.
Whoa, indeed.
Wow.
So, as you're acknowledging there was this sort of death phase where you had to go in, how do you handle that discomfort while you're bridging the gap?
It's so funny too, because I've been on a spiritual adventure, I now call it. I'm letting go of journeying, because this is an adventure, folks. I've been on this spiritual adventure for the last 10+ years. And a lot of what I studied during that time was understanding our emotional waves and how to navigate those waves. I've done workshops on them. I used to run courses specifically on how to navigate our emotions and the beauty of emotions and the doorways behind emotions. And I've done talks on it. And I always get a taste of my own medicine. So I can deepen into it to be able to speak about it. So I can have that experience. So for me, it's been, number one, reflecting on the things that I've known to be true, taught about, to embody it deeper and go, what does this really look like for me? How can I sustain myself? And how can I really hold steady beyond what's going on in my world? There's a deeper part of me that is always steady. And for me, that comes from my spiritual practices. It comes from my journaling. It comes from my time in nature. It comes from also disconnecting my identity with the business. And I think that's a hard thing to do when we love our work, and it does become a little bit of a gray area.
Yeah, and so many of us don't know how to build boundaries from the beginning as we're venturing into entrepreneurship and teaching and coaching and publishing. Most of us don't have that sort of spiritual, energetic education straight out of the gate, right? Did you go to college like traditional undergrad, grad school, or did you bypass all of that?
I did go to traditional college. I always say I'm kind of a dichotomy because I can dance between the worlds. But prior to college, I also had been on my yoga journey already, and I also had illness. And with my illness, I had Lyme disease, and it just manifested in so many different ways physically. I was awakened to a different way of being, living, doing, and experiencing the world from a very young age because of that. Even with holistic medicine and alternative medicine, like my mom allowed me to open up into that field. So I always saw more pathways. I'm also raised by two entrepreneurs. So I'm raised by creatives who are also super businessy, but very creative. So there was always a seed planted for me of there's not just one way to do things. You can do what you love and make something beautiful out of that. And also, there is beauty to a traditional structural path to going to college and, finding a job after that. So I went to Rutgers University in New Jersey, and I lived a party life. I had both feet in both worlds. I could go to the ashram in the weekends, and then I could go out and party the next day. So we were dancing a little bit.
Balance.
Yeah, we were dancing. So it was an interesting experience. I'm glad I had the full experience, I would say, because even though it felt confusing to have the understanding of depth and spirituality and purpose and health, it was also fun to do all the other things.
And it's good to have that to kind of come back to center after you've played. And I think that that's what a lot of people are missing is it's like one or the other. It's like all the introduction for this episode, right? I said something to the effect of serious and silly. Like it's important that we find our rhythm and our balance in things. And this human conversation of pivoting, the fact that we change our minds, that we're fluid, that if we come back to center and we really assess, we may uncover new aspects of ourselves that we didn't know 5 minutes prior that we then have to update people on. And so I'm going through that in my own pivot right now with transitioning out of therapy and the fact that I've changed my mind on the timeline of that and being open and vulnerable to people that you're changing. Like it sounds like your question about being a publisher, there was this question of like, am I doing this because I like the idea and what other people might feel about it, or do I really like this for me? Is kind of how I took that.
Yeah, and that's such a deep, confronting, provoking question. I'm glad that I was brave enough to enter that realm and be like, oh shit, is that what's going on here? And then to my not surprised, because it was quite obvious physically if these things are manifesting for me, that there was an alternative path available. And, separating myself and kind of going through that transition of starting to let go of some of the publishing work. I do still have a cookbook coming out at the end of this year, and I'm super excited about it. So there are still projects happening behind the scenes, but I've been moving slowly in another direction. And I think what's been important and challenging was, like you said, was to have conversations with people, and I had to, at that time, end of 2022, I had contracts going for books for this year. And I had to have numerous conversations with people who had like put in deposits. And I said, I'm so sorry. I cannot do it. And I refunded them. I was like, I just can't do it. And what's the beauty when you're aligned with your clients? They understood that because they actually they could feel there was something changing for them too. So beautiful to have open, transparent conversation, and challenging because,
Yeah. Yeah, I was just having another conversation today about sort of why we fear or are ashamed of or disappointed in the idea of communication, from nurture, right? From what we've experienced in others. And you raised such a really good point about the alignment piece because many of us have not been around people who are aligned most of our lives, and we've been met with that resistance, that attack, right? Like when people haven't been in alignment with our new choices and our upgraded boundaries and things like that. So I think that in of itself speaks to you being in a really aligned place in life, that you are able to have these conversations and know, like, have that inner wise seat, know that it's going to be okay, that you don't have to stop yourself from moving forward.
Yeah. I'm also so grateful to have, friends. I have a therapist who I also work with, because during these times of, this literally felt like an identity death for me. And during that time, I knew I needed to be held and just speak and cry and not know. Like, I didn't know, I didn't have the clarity of the next step at that point. And I think that's important to talk about too, because although right now I feel extremely clear, I know where I'm going, I have the business outlined, it's extremely clear. And yet to arrive here was a messy, it was just messy, super messy. That's the only word.
Human messes instead of human beings. We just kind of, yeah. That was the energy.
Well, human messes and human beings, but we forget to do the be part.
Yeah.
Like,
And that's probably why it's very messy.
yeah.
If we could just master the balance between the acting and the being, probably less messes.
I ask myself that like a lot. And we all know this, there's such beauty in the polarity of it all, because would we have the ability to see the new heights if we didn't go to depths? And sometimes I wish it didn't have to feel so messy, because it is really challenging. And yet, like, we're human beings on this planet, and we get to experience the entire spectrum of human emotion. And that's why I think understanding the power and beauty within each emotion, understanding that we're not stuck there also, we can navigate, and we can feel, and we can navigate and feel something else.
And everything is impermanent. Everything.
Correct.
So you have this plan and this vision. Like, are you talking openly about what the next step is for you?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of coming back to my original plan, which was I've always wanted to be a speaker. Like, that's always been the plan. It kind of got, I'm not even going to say diverted, because that was a beautiful sidestep to then come back, and I learned a lot of things that I can then incorporate. So Bridget as speaker, and I'm going to London next week and get to, do some of that. And now I get to put a little more time toward that. So I'd say that's totally a part of it. And another big piece of clarity that I haven't like openly shared, but it feels cool to share it here, is, I've always desired the autonomy to work for myself. I like that. That feels really good for me. Yum. And at the same time, I love being part of a team. I love collaborating with people. I love, I don't know if it's because I'm a generator in human design, but I do really well bouncing ideas off of people to find my inspiration and to see my path forward. So I've been doing some work with other businesses in a consulting capacity, and that teamwork aspect. So one thing I'm pretty clear on is I'm going to have my own stuff that people can work directly with me, but I'm also going to be supporting other businesses, still maintaining me as Bridget, but in a consulting capacity to go in and work with other businesses, whether it's in brand strategy, brand development, messaging. I have a lot I can do with companies, and that feels really cool to be like, oh, I see that you don't want to go back into corporate, but there's a beautiful middle ground that we've wiggled to. And I keep doing this, and you guys are probably like, three.
Yeah, you do have a tendency to use your hands right here. See, Body of 9 in action. Like, I love talking about Body of 9, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it, because it's so physical and so tangible. It's just right there. It's right here. That is a really awesome pivot for you, because, yeah, I mean, I got to work with you a little bit in Sedona on just like getting me onto a page to like talk about me, and you were such a tremendous help on just getting me to focus, figuring out not the right words, because there's never like a perfect word, but the ideal words for what I was trying to convey. And that is so immensely valuable to help people get organized in what they're trying to share with the world. It's, in a way, it's publishing adjacent.
Yeah. I always say that I've always had a way with words, and there's a reason why publishing came into my sphere, because it was still with that idea of words and bringing out to the world. Like, my background is in sales and marketing. After I graduated college, I was in a sales job. So sales, speaking the language of the people, like, that's always been there. And now it's just, don't you feel like this too for both of you? There's always puzzle pieces along our journey. And sometimes they don't make sense when we're in them and it feels messy, or we're like, why the hell am I doing this? And then you have that moment of zooming out and you go, oh, duh, here we go. It makes sense. Perfect.
Yeah, things definitely aligning. I mean, my career trajectory has been being an English teacher into a therapist, and now I'm going into spiritual guidance and like ritual facilitation for people, which is really just educating them on going within to find their answers, kind of like therapy.
Yeah.
And yeah, just in a different capacity. And the more that we can be authentic in who we are and our gifts, the more we can fine tune moment to moment what, feels right. But I love this idea of lifting up other businesses, because I know that that's something that's really important to us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've really started to look into our local businesses that are eco-friendly, sustainable, humanitarian, that are bringing social justice issues to the forefront, and just A, frequenting them,
Mm-hmm.
and B, trying to promote them, even if it's like literally a picture. Hey, we went here and it was great. But then also being able to share things like what you're doing, right? Like introducing people to the right people. Hey, do you know Bridget? Like, she can help you literally come up with this master plan for your business strategy and your sales and your marketing and your messaging. And like, this is what her energy in particular is going to feel like. When we have those real connections, we can so much more easily land with the people that are ideal to help us.
For me, it always comes back to clarity too, and this is why I'm very passionate about helping business owners with message, because especially when we dwell in the realms of transformational work or healing work, a lot of times it's in the ethers. It's not like me going to a coffee shop and buying a coffee. It's very obvious the direct need I had. I wanted coffee. Okay, I go to a coffee shop, that's where the sale is made. When you are in the healing realms, sometimes it can be very hard to explain the work you do. And if it's hard to explain the work that you do, it's going to obviously impact your sales, but it's also going to be hard to build, not hard to build relationships, but hard for other people to understand what you do, to then refer you out to others, right? And this is where like getting clear on those basic things, or at least having analogies to explain your really, really deep work. It's like, hey, I'm Bridget, think of me as the modern day mystic. And then you're like, oh, I get that she's a spiritual healer or something. Just having words and language that we can relate to, I find very interesting, and I'm very passionate about, as you can see.
I think, because I've been in the realm of trying to help figure out Safi's messaging and what she does, because she's like, some of the close friends and family are, kind of the beta users of her services. And so we're having meetings, and she's like, how can I best use this space? And she's like, and I'm here for you guys. And I'm like, okay, what do I need? Like, if you're here for me, like, it's kind of like it's a very, big question, because like I have this happen with my therapy clients, unless they, usually they're like, why did you come to therapy? What's your presenting problem, right? That's usually a good starting point, and then we'll build therapeutic rapport, and then other things will be made clear, like, oh, we've talked about some of my anxiety, here's more trauma. And then I'll be like, cool, glad we got to the point where we could feel safe to talk to me about those things. But when you just kind of have like a basic, like, I have these gifts, and they're here for you, it's like, I just came here to be supported in general, but I also don't know like what specific support looks like in this spiritual realm, right? And so like that's a lot of what messaging happens too, is like, And the thing with Safriana is like she's able to go in, like she's a networking guru where she can just find people who know other people who know other people, and then all of a sudden she's in this like class that is about the spiritual concepts, and I'm like, I don't, but like for her, like it sounds like you'll read some of these broad messaging pieces that are spiritual and you'll be like, yes, that clicks with me. And so it's like you want to provide something similar, but it's like,
but unique.
What are people looking for in terms of spiritual healing or, you know, authenticity searching? And
yeah, and like those realizations come in like a live conversation with someone like you, Bridget, who's able to ask the right kinds of questions to tease out what's really trying to be offered.
Yeah.
Because like I know what I offer feels like, but God forbid I have to put it into words to other people. I'm like, spiritual container?
Yeah. Everyone's like, what's a container? What I do it?
Every time I'm like writing up a draft, I always use container, and then people are like, what does that mean? I'm like, I hold space really well. And then they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, like getting into what people can understand and relate to, but not speaking so broadly that you're trying to sweep in a whole, like everybody, because then you're speaking to nobody.
Right.
And that's a hard line too.
It is. You hit on something like really, really smart there, because before I ever did publishing, I ran programs called Rock the Mic Online. And it was all about using video to get clear on your message and to sell your offers because you built know, like, and trust, blah, blah, blah. But the interesting thing that happened that I didn't plan to happen was that when people were speaking about what they did, they started to have their own clarity, because when they were speaking it out loud versus writing it down in their journal or keeping it in their mind, they realized they used different words than compared to writing. So there's actually a really, really helpful process to speak it. Like I'll be talking to my phone. I'm like, what am I doing? Bridget does that. Like I'll speak to my phone to talk it out.
I do that kind of stuff all the time too.
This podcast isn't sponsored by Otter.ai, but if they want to start sponsoring us, Safriana uses it religiously.
See?
Yeah, and I know that's a whole other soapbox we could get in, is like using AI for assistance but not running your whole business, because then you get out of the authenticity piece, and like I'm sure you're going to encounter that in your consulting as you branch into that, because it's massive right now. But yeah, like even not completely externalizing our voice to these other sources, but instead allowing them to help us fine tune our own. And then getting that human component in there that's really able to feel the impact of something, and can work on all levels, including like almost the energetic levels.
Yeah.
Literally the energetic levels of how the words feel, what they evoke.
And words do that. The reason I also love words is because when I was studying yoga, I was fascinated by mantra. I loved chanting, I loved singing, and I was like, what's going on here? Like, why do I feel so deeply when I'm singing or chanting and repeating it over time? And it really is just that words can strike a chord within something within us. You know, it's when we listen to loud music, we literally feel it in our body, and that is sound, and our words are sound too. So I think spoken word is extremely powerful. Written word too, but spoken word, because you're receiving all of like my outputs and you're inputting it. And if you repeat this over and over and over and over again, it can shift something in you. It's just like when we listen to music, or we listen to a recording over and over again, or an affirmation. It's that same idea of repetition over and over and over again through sound. Hope that makes any sense at all, because I think I just
absolutely. Okay. Yeah, we're both big music people.
So you get it.
Yeah, you're actually working on some stuff right now.
Yeah, I mean when you were talking about your career journey, like, you know, I went the undergrad route for music production, and then I got a part-time job that I'm still in, but that's not like a sustainable, like it pays like one bill. But yeah, so that is one job, and then but I still apply the knowledge of that in what we're gonna, with the podcast recordings. Like I have a bunch of
Thank
different,
God for sound engineering.
yeah, like I have the nice microphones, I have the interfaces, like I've learned, I know what to look for in those things. I can upload the recording and add, like the intro and outro music I created. Like, I have all of these different things that I didn't realize I was going to be using in this business. And then same thing with therapy, there's different ways to incorporate, like the therapeutic concepts into music now. So it's like there's, I've been fascinated with like solfeggio tones. Like that's been really interesting.
Love me some solfeggio.
Because it's just kind of like, I was like, it's just, the reason why solfeggio music is made is because like you can technically just listen to the sine wave of 741 hertz for like cell detox, but oh my gosh, I could not do that for
boring.
No. So I've just been kind of like, 741 hertz is around F sharp, and so I've been messing around with different overall ambient sounding pieces that are around like F sharp major or F sharp minor, and just kind of like exploring what that looks like and sounds like. And you talking about like words over and over again, I've noticed that like when I read an affirmation, it feels different than if I say it. And it also goes into what we were watching yesterday. So we're watching a TV show called Severance, which also has to deal with like,
it's literally separation of the work mind from the personal mind. It's very trippy.
It's very interesting. But one of the like almost consequence-based punishment system thing that they make the work mind do if they are starting to question whether or not they want to be the work mind forever, is they have like this paragraph statement that they say over and over and over again, and the person that's like watching them is like, you don't mean that, say it again. Until you keep meaning that. And so that sort of concept, can happen in an abusive way, but it's like you can totally turn that around and do it in a way that affects you in a positive way. So it's like saying these affirmations over and over again, like you will start to believe it after a while, like those internal vibrations that are happening while you're saying like, I'm awesome, I deserve love, like.
Yeah, and there's so many interesting studies and stuff out there of the impact of, like, if we talk to plants and we encourage them and are kind versus if we yell at them, and the impact of different types of music, and even like the vibrations on speakers. If you put the sand on top and it makes mandala shapes, like there is something deeply spiritual about the word. I mean, even the word is something that is kind of a thing across many religions.
Well, like the Toltec wisdom is be impeccable with your word.
Right. Because it's creating the reality around you. Yeah. So cool that you're going to be helping people navigate that in that new way. Like, it's going to be super powerful.
Thank you. Yeah. I love to talk about this kind of stuff, and it's really empowering also when we can understand it, when we know how to speak about what we do. Words are just cool. And yes, they do shape our reality.
Yeah, very much so. So if people wanted to work with you, how would they go about getting in touch with you? What kinds of people are you calling in? Like, who are your dream people?
Dream people. So I have two separate businesses. I have a partnership business with my dear friend Lydia. It's called Visibility on Purpose, and that is all about media exposure, getting on podcasts, and we teach people how to pitch themselves. So it's a lot. I bring my messaging magic, and she's a publicist. So we link together, create this brainchild. It's really cool. So if you're on the podcast, you want to get editorials, you want to learn how the press world works, you know, to build this press trail, that's Visibility on Purpose. So you can go to visibilityonpurpose.com. Instagram, you know, we're there. And then me personally, I'm BridgetAileen.com or Bridget Aileen Sicsko across all social medias. And that's really for you if you are in a rebrand, a pivot like me, or you're offering something new and you need clarity on what it is that you're doing and you need the words. So we do brand message, we do brand differentiation, we do brand strategy. And I have a couple of different ways that I work with people, whether it's just one-on-one for a moment or a little bit more extended.
Very, very cool. Yeah. Obviously, we hope that you find your soul clients and can, because your magic, when you're owning your magic and your joy, like you have the capacity to help so many other people skyrocket their impact. And that's an incredible thing to be doing, right? We don't think about the impact of how important things like messaging and marketing and sales and all of that is, because it's so out of whack in our regular societal system. Like it's pretty gross out there, these categories, and in the real world, in reality. So we're making this new way of being, and you are pioneering that. I know that you come from a place of joy when you do this work with people.
It's very, very fun for me. And someone called me the dream launcher the other day. I cried.
Oh, that is so sweet.
No.
And
the dream launcher.
To quote Bridget, I love that.
I love that.
Well, thank you so much for having this chat with us. I think that, you know, you're doing such important work in the world just with regards to shining the light on people's dreams and helping them excavate the core of their message so that they can find their people too.
Thank you.
So empowering. Well, thank you for yet another heckin' awesome conversation.
Yep.
And we will catch you all soon on the next episode of Living Luna. Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you.
Bye.